Today on Church Public, current events from a Christian perspective. A California church that was fined over $200,000 for the great crime of having worship services during the lockdown has their fines dropped. And while America battles over whether to save babies from the moment of conception or to kill them after they're born, China is creating more and more restrictions on abortion. Yes, you heard that right. Restrictions on abortion in China. You know, the communist country. Also, a children's hospital is proud of their gender reassignment procedures on children. And the American Academy of Pediatrics seems to be suppressing dialogue on whether it's actually a good idea at all to trans the kids. I'm Matt Odegaard, and this is Church Public. Welcome back to Church Public. My name is Matt Odegaard, and I'm glad that you joined me here today. Today, we are looking at current events from a Christian perspective because I want to help you know what's going on in this world so that you can go out your door, so you can figure out how do you be a Christian? How do you live like Christ while you're in this crazy and weird world that just seems to be getting weirder and weirder? My goal is to help you do that, to follow after Jesus and live in the public square. So I hope that I do that. If this is helpful to you, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit that share button, share it with a friend. You can always check out the video if you happen to be listening on audio at churchpublic.com/podcast. All right, let's get into some news. Okay, so today, the first story that we have is that a California church continued to hold services in defiance of county health orders that said, you have to close down your church during the COVID-19 pandemic. And I know firsthand because I was also in a California church that had to close its doors for the COVID-19 pandemic. And in fact, that's probably a large part of why I'm here in Texas today, though there are a bunch of other reasons as well. So the good news is, after about 2 years of court battles, they had their almost $200,000 in fines dropped. Robert Tyler, president of Advocates for Faith and Freedom, said, quote, "This is a significant victory for churches and pastors across the country." And I would add, I agree. He said that in a press release after the California Court of Appeal reversed an injunction against Calvary Chapel San Jose. He said, quote, "We are honored to represent pastors and churches who are willing to take the heat in defense of liberty because it benefits everyone." I've talked for a lot of episodes. You can go back and listen to a bunch of those at churchpublic.com or churchpublic on any of the podcast places, Spotify and iTunes or Apple, whatever it's called now. Anyway, you get it. You can find it. So, at issue was the church's refusal to comply with health officials in Santa Clara County who obtained a temporary restraining order in November of 2020 against Calvary Chapel and Mike McClure and Carson Atherley after the church failed to follow pandemic health orders that included restrictions on in-person services, mask mandates, etc., etc. I can say, again, firsthand, we were not allowed to sing because singing was evil and dangerous and would kill your grandmother, which it didn't. Because singing. Plus, even if that were the case, you have the autonomy, the ability to come to God's throne. Anyone, anything in the organization, even a church who says you can't worship God in a particular place is getting in between you and God. And let me just say, from a bystander's perspective, I would not choose to get in between a person and God. God tends to really like his relationship with people. And if you get in between that, go back and listen to the episode that I did earlier this week about kings. Even when a king comes in between his people and God, God deals with them, sometimes severely. So this defiance eventually resulted in over $200,000 in fines for the church, which continued to hold worship services as the monetary penalties mounted. This article goes on to say that Calvary Chapel's persistence eventually paid off, and they reversed their fines on Monday. Quote, "For the reasons stated below, we conclude the temporary restraining order and preliminary injunction are facially unconstitutional." Did you hear that? Unconstitutional, people. "Pursuant to the recent guidelines of the United States Supreme Court regarding the First Amendment's protection of free exercise of religion in the context of public health orders that impact religious practices." In other words, as I've said from a biblical perspective, you have the right to worship, and the pastor has the right to open the church doors. You have the responsibility for you. If you don't want to go, fine, don't go. No one is forcing you to go. But to force other people not to go, that's a different thing. Both according to the Constitution, as we see here, and I would say according to the Bible. The court said, as the underlying orders which Calvary Chapel violated are void and unenforceable, we will annul the order of contempt in their entirety and reverse the orders to pay monetary sanctions. This is good news, and we are thankful for it. That for once, and even in California, that's why this is a big story. That's why I wanted to bring it to you. In California, it's a big story that the court said, hey, no, you can't force people to not worship. Right, that's what I've been saying for at least 2 years now, if not more. All right, let's keep going and move to China. No, please don't move to China. Anyway, this next story is from China. Here's an interesting side note as well. This next story is from China, and it's about China's new policies on abortion. And originally, I bookmarked this maybe a couple days ago. And this, maybe it was yesterday. I'm sorry, I'm losing track of time. It doesn't really matter. What matters is, I bookmarked this story from the Washington Post. And then I went back and I clicked on the bookmark that I had linked. And I'm looking at the bookmark right here. I have the bookmark. I can read you the URL for what I saved. And it's gone. The article is gone. And it just makes me go like, is that kind of suspicious that the Washington Post article about China disappeared? Anyway, who knows at this point? So I had to go back to the link that I saved, and I had to go find this article from another place, and I found it from Fox News. And that's fine. But as a side note, I really like to grab articles from not right-wing sources, aka left-wing sources, whenever possible, so that you know I'm not making things up, and I do have a conservative and a Christian bias. I do. I try to make no bones about that. That's my perspective. This is current events from a Christian perspective. I try to say it over and over and over again so that you know that's what I do, that's what I mean, that's what I'm trying to do. However, when I get the news and from where I get the news, I want it to be as unbiased as possible so that I can report on the story, so that I can give you the story from the other perspective if possible. At any rate, I was not able to do that because the story disappeared. Strange. Let's continue on. So, we're talking about China. So according to Fox News, this is, let me grab the article title for you. Article title is, China begins discouraging abortions and promoting fertility treatment as birth rate plummets. And so this is the news. China will discourage abortions. This is according to Fox News. They will take steps to make fertility treatment more accessible as part of efforts to boost one of the world's lowest birth rates. That's China's National Health Authority said on Tuesday. We've talked about birth rates on this show before because there's a certain crowd, there's a certain group of people that will say people are going to overpopulate the earth and the earth is going to die, or Mother Earth is going to die, or something's going to happen because there's not enough resources to take care of all the people on the earth. Actually, the opposite is what is happening. Whether it is because people are scared of climate change, whether in China it's because of things like the one-child policy that was enacted in 1980 and had disastrous consequences because people would literally kill any other babies that they had, or if they had a girl, they would kill the girl because nobody wants a girl, you only want boys. So now China has a bunch of boys and no girls, which again, going to biology, which we'll talk about later in another story, you kind of need girls and boys to make more girls and boys. Why do I have to talk about basic biology? But I do. So, down to the numbers. China's fertility rate is around 1.16. The standard that everybody in economy knows, you need 2.1 to replace the population, or at least make the population stable. You actually want more than 2.1 to grow your population. So 1.16 is way, way lower than the 2 that any country needs. And in fact, we've talked about America before. America has an underpopulation problem. There are many parts of America that are not even close to this 2 number. They're also in the ones. And that's bad because you cannot have an economy, you cannot have a community, you cannot replace the people to just live life and to do the businesses and to do everything. You need more and more people. If you don't have people, then you can't have an economy, you can't have a community. This should be standard. People should understand this, but apparently they don't. So in China has now noticed this, and they're growing older before they're growing up. In other words, all of these people are growing old. Even some of them are moving out of the workforce, but there's not enough people to replace those that are leaving the workforce. That's an economic problem that they have, and they know that they have. So this one-child policy that they did in 1980, and I think it ended in 2015, they've acknowledged that they are in a disastrous place. And so now in 2016, I think they did a 2-child policy. So now you're allowed to have 2. And in 2021, last year, they actually said now you can have 3. All of these situations, by the way, if a government is saying, well, you can have 1 or maybe 2 or maybe even 3. Like, by the way, as a side note, I have 4. So I don't know what that means. I'd be killed. They'd be killed. Who knows? China is a terrible place. As I mentioned at the beginning, don't go there. We'll talk more about that in a second. But these guidelines about limiting abortion now at the national level is the most stringent abortion that China has had for years and years and years and years. And the authorities in China said, quote, "This is crucial for promoting the long-term balanced development of the population," end quote. I agree. You need people. I just mentioned that. We all should know that. You need people to have an economy, to have a community. You need people. So, this is according to Fox. It stands to note that, and it's actually according to me. I'm reading my own writing, and I don't even know who I wrote it. So, it stands to note that China, communist China, is pursuing way more strict anti-abortion policies than the United States. This is actually a thing, and this should be a problem. This should raise red flags for you. Sure, after Roe is being overturned and it's back to the states, we have some states, 20-something states, that are enforcing strict laws about abortion and saying you can't do abortions. Yes, we have some, but you still have the Californias, the New Yorks, the Washingtons, other states that are paying people to go and stay in a hotel and get an abortion. And when I say they are paying, what I really mean is you are paying. If you're a taxpayer in California, New York, Washington, some of these other really liberal in abortion states, you are paying for the service to house the mother-to-be, to kill the baby in the womb. If you're a resident of these states, you're paying for it. And now, here's the point. These states in America are way more progressive and more liberal in abortion policy than China. This should set off alarm bells for you. If you are worse than China in any policy, that's a problem. Let's just say, period, full stop. Now, of course, from a Christian perspective, we know that murder is wrong, no matter the age, no matter the stage, and we know that is not the motive of China. China is not worried about morality and the morality of killing babies. I don't think they care. They clearly don't care because they're still limiting it to 3 kids. But practically speaking, they're just out of people. The people are growing old before they're growing up, and that is literally unsustainable. Their economy is crashing and will get worse and worse and worse because there are not and will not be enough people to support it. And we should take note of that. I still think, and I'm going to keep saying, from a Christian perspective, from a moral perspective, we just shouldn't kill people for no reason. Whether they're in the womb, whether they're old, anywhere. We just shouldn't kill people for no reason, period. But even if for some reason China is saying kill less people, that's a good thing. America, different states, California, Washington, New York, take notice of this. Learn from China, which sounds like the craziest thing. How can you say learn from China? Anyway, just do it. Like, stop killing babies. All right, let's come back home for a moment and come back to Michigan. This is just an interesting and kind of weird and kind of sad story. Let me pull it up here. There was a Michigan church that was firebombed. And this Michigan church their food pantry was firebombed. And Pastor Curtis Oshkosh, probably messed up that name, but Pastor Curtis Oshkosh of the Detroit Area Harvest Time Christian Fellowship in Warren, Michigan, announced on Facebook that someone firebombed and set on fire the church's food storage container holding countless tons, that's his words, of food distributed daily to those in need throughout Warren, the city. He lamented this firebombing caused thousands of dollars in damage and resulted in a total loss. He says they served more than 1,500 families per month, and he adds, "This is pure evil, exclamation point, exclamation point, exclamation point." I agree. This is pure evil. Why would you do that? Why would you destroy food that was meant for needy families? Like, that's a terrible act. Of course it is. And I'll skip most of this article. It just, Like, it's just really sad. And here's my point. And I don't know. He went on and lamented the firebombing, but this is just evil. And there's no word yet if this is connected to the firebombings of churches and pro-life pregnancy centers around America for the last several weeks. But that's another reason, like 2 reasons why I brought this story. One, it's just terrible that someone would attack at a church in this way. And the damage that they've done is not, I mean, it's to the church, but the damage that they've done is to the community. This church has helped feed thousands of people. And now you've hurt all of the people in the community who rely on this church for food. That's just a tragedy. But the other question is, number 2, like, is this connected to all of the firebombings of churches and pro-life pregnancy centers? I don't know. It doesn't say. No one seems to know yet, but it is an alarming trend, if nothing else. All right, let's move from Michigan to Boston. This story, I don't know what to say. I don't know where to go with this story. So, a children's hospital in Boston's Children's Hospital, have been. They've had these videos. They've had this website for a long time, but these videos have been making the rounds, and so we have to talk about them. And these videos talk about how they perform gender supportive procedures. Read. Hormone therapies, chemical sterilization, top surgery, where they remove women's breasts, other surgeries to change the, I'll just say it this way, outer parts of a boy to look like a girl, or outer parts of a girl to look like a boy. And it's not reproductive function, because you can't do that. We don't have the technology yet to do that. Maybe they will get there, but that's not the point. The point is, we're just talking about visual representation and changing it. And now I think it also includes hysterectomies for girls or young women to remove their uterus so they can't be pregnant ever, and sterilizing them. And they're celebrating this. And you have to hear it from them. I'm gonna play this clip and a couple of clips here, and you hear it from them.
A child will often know that they are transgender from the moment that they have any ability to express themselves, and parents will often tell us this. We have parents who tell us that their kids, they knew from the minute they were born practically, and actions like refusing to get a haircut, or standing to urinate, trying to stand to urinate, refusing to stand to urinate, trying on siblings' clothing, playing with the, quote, opposite gender toys, things like that. There is more and more a group of adolescents that we are seeing that really are coming to the realization that they might be trans or gender diverse a little bit later on in their life. So what we're seeing from them is that they always sort of knew something was maybe off and didn't have the understanding to know that they might be trans or have a different gender identity than the one they had been assigned. So that is a growing population that we are seeing, and that's being recognized as being trans and able to be treated.
So, I mean, there's so much wrong. We're going to talk about it in a second. I'm going to play the second clip for you. But at the very end, and if you need to rewind it, rewind it. It happened really fast, but I want you to hear that she says, so those are able to be treated. So we're talking about young kids, as young as like 2 years old or in the womb or whatever, that are able to be treated. Those are her words. These children are able to be treated in these ways. Let's listen to the second clip, and then we'll talk about it a little bit.
So most of the patients that we have in the GEMS clinic actually know their gender, usually around the age of puberty, but a good portion of children do know as early as seemingly from the womb, and they will usually express their gender identity as very young children, some as soon as they can talk. They might say phrases such as, I'm a girl, or I'm a boy, or I'm going to be a woman, or I'm going to be a mom. Kids know very, very early. So in the GEMS clinic, we see a variety of young children all the way down to ages 2 and 3, and usually up to the ages of 9. When they come into the clinic, they'll see one of our psychologists, and we'll be talking to them about their gender. We'll be talking to their family about how to best support that child and how to make sure that that child has the space and support to explore their gender and do well throughout their development. And we'll be answering any parent questions. A lot of parents do have questions, and so we answer those questions. The biggest piece of advice I give parents who are coming through the gender clinic clinic at Boston Children's Hospital is to just be supportive. Sometimes you might not understand, sometimes you feel like you don't know the terms, or you don't kind of get exactly what the child means when they say that they might be this gender, but the biggest thing you can do is just love your child and support them and just allow them to express themselves. That's the biggest protector as well against negative mental health effects such as depression, suicidality, anxiety that we worry about for our gender diverse kids and young adults. So that support from a parent is one of the best protective factors and one of the best things they can do.
Wow, there's just so much wrong with that. So, I'm not often without words. So there's just so much wrong here. You may even need to rewind and listen to it a couple more times if you haven't seen this clip before, because it's mind-blowing the assumptions that are made in here of 2 and 3-year-olds. Hospital saying regularly sees transgender children either from the womb, they know, like before they're born, when they're born, that they're transgender, or when they're 2 or 3. And so they meet with a psychologist who then sends them into this world of gender transitioning or whatever. And the best thing you can do, according to this lady, is to be supportive as a parent. So I just, and then the first lady says, if your kid who's 2, 3, 4, 5 wants a different haircut or is playing with opposite gender toys, like they're a girl and they're playing with trucks or something, that means they're in the wrong gender. They must be in a different gender, right? I mean, parents. You know what? I'm going to tell a personal story. When my kids were little, one of my children wanted to be Spider-Man and wore a Spider-Man suit like pretty much nonstop for months. Another one of my children wanted to be, and thought they were, in fact, Buzz Lightyear with wings and a spacesuit. And one of them wanted to be a dinosaur and wore a dinosaur costume a bunch of the time. So this logic that these ladies are telling us, and I don't know if they're doctors, but they're referencing doctors at the Boston Children's Hospital, has children's in the name. These ladies, according to their logic, it would tell me that I should transition my children when they were younger to a genetically modified Spider-Man or a spaceman or a literal dinosaur. This is just madness. Even from a logical perspective, it's madness. What 2-year-old, 5-year-old, even 15-year-old has any idea what they want to be as an adult? Maybe when you're getting close to 15, you know what you want to be. But to think that you want to be something different physically than you are and change your physical characteristics in that way, going from one gender to another, which literally is impossible. But do these kids have any idea what they want at 2 or 5 when they say hey, Dad, today I'm a dinosaur? So I should just say, like, yes, you're correct. I was wrong the whole time. I thought you were a boy, but actually you're right. You're a dinosaur. This is madness, and we need to call this out as madness. And really, we just need to laugh at this ridiculousness. Like, I'm infuriated, and you're probably hearing that, feeling that from me. But I also it's hilarious. If it wasn't so terrible that they were destroying these kids physically, you would just want to laugh at it and go like, you're literally ridiculous. Like, you are on another planet making things up and making the world the way you want it to be, and it's literal madness. But unfortunately, we have to also realize, like, they're destroying these children's lives, so we should be infuriated by this. And this just doesn't follow even their own logic. If you can't know a child is a boy or a girl because their outward appearance is changing, and then even a toy selection might be right or wrong, then how can I have any different outward appearance, like from long hair to short hair or whatever, playing with girls' toys and boys' toys to girls' toys? How does that even make sense? In other words, here, let me play this out for you. So if you're saying that you can't know if you're a girl or a boy, and the haircut you have in one sense points into the other sense, then how can any toy be in that category either? How can you categorize toys as girl toys or boy toys if you can't even categorize a girl or a boy? If you can't answer the question of what is a girl or what is a boy or what is a woman or what is a boy, how can you possibly answer the question of what is a girl's toy or a boy toy? If you're feeling out of control and this is like spinny mental gymnastics, right, that's where we are in this, because they say on the one hand, you can't know if it's a girl or a boy, or maybe they know that they're a girl or a boy, or maybe they don't know, or maybe you should just let them figure it out. How can you know anything else about them? And the reality is, we are in the land of ridiculousness. And we need to not do that. And we need to stick in the land of reality, because reality is better. It's better for everybody. And we're just in this crazy, crazy time. And if you can't even know whether a girl is a girl or a girl is a boy, maybe you should just let your child play with the toys that they want to play with. And if your girl wants to play with trucks and hammers, like, let them. Who cares? And if your boy wants to play with Barbies for a day or a week or a month, who cares? Let them do it. Like, we have lost our collective minds on this, and we really need to change our ways and go back to what is real, because we have to understand that letting them play with a toy or buy a different toy, we're asked to believe that instead of just changing their toys or letting them play with toys, having permanent chemical and physical procedures for these minors will solve their problems of thinking they want to be something else, whether that's a girl or a boy or a spider or a dinosaur. It just doesn't make sense. But this named children's hospital with children in the name says this is not only okay, but it's good. And if you disagree, you are literally committing violence. There was another article that I saw where they were saying that they've been getting phone calls saying how bad it is that they're doing this, and that is violence. The words that you say, if you don't agree with this, if you don't fully affirm it, if you don't fully support it, if you don't send all of your kids there to have these procedures, you are committing violence. And Boston Children's Hospital's Center for Gender Surgery, that was a mouthful, boasts they are, quote, the first center of its kind in the U.S. in a major pediatric hospital setting. End quote. It's operating on this logic that children can choose their gender because they know they are the wrong gender before they are even born. And that leads us to this other kind of weird article where the American Academy of Pediatrics has been accused of, quote, stonewalling the debate on drugs, puberty blockers, and surgeries for children in a document titled In Support of a Rigorous Systematic Review of Evidence and Policy for Update for Management of Pediatric Gender Dysphoria. I know that was a lot, but that's literally the document title. In Resolution 27, 5 AAP, American Academy of Pediatric members, voiced concerns about using hormones, surgeries as the first line of treatment for gender dysphoria instead of counseling or therapy. The medical professionals cite evidence for psychotherapy as a treatment option, including a systemic review conducted by the Finnish Health Authority purporting this should be the first line of treatment instead of puberty blockers and sex hormones. In this resolution, that's number 27, critics hoped would be considered by the 2022 AAP Annual Leadership Conference. Members call for the Academy to undergo a systemic review regarding the safety of childhood sex transition and update its 2018 guidelines based on the results. The 2018 guidelines say they include medical intervention and puberty suppression as potential ways to help those who identify as the opposite gender. However, the AAP has allegedly blocked members from launching a policy review based on the resolution of Resolution 27. Now, that was a lot of gobbledygook words. The translation is this. There were members of the American Academy of Pediatrics who said, hey, maybe it's not a good idea to transition children medically and physically. Maybe we should do some counseling for them. Maybe we should figure another way. Maybe we should see if that's the best way. The Academy apparently said, we're not even going to talk about it. So again, the doctors in the American Academy of Pediatrics are not allowed to say, hey, maybe we should think about this. Hey, maybe we should talk about this. In comments leaked to the Daily Mail by a whistleblower, members voiced their concerns in the comment section for different resolutions on the AAP members-only website. In other words, one member said, excuse me, there is no open dialogue on the medical treatment by the AAP. Another one, Julia Mason, an Oregon-based pediatrician and one of the Resolution 27 authors, said an increasing number of colleagues want to slow down handling of puberty blockers. Instead, they want to spend more time evaluating trans-identifying teens. Right. Let's talk to people instead of medically and physically transitioning them to another gender, which is not actually possible. A spokesman for the AAP cited a blog written by the AAP president, Moira, I'm going to mess this up, Silagi. That's all I got. Anyway, I'm going to say Dr. S. wrote, AAP's gender-affirming policy is grounded in supporting LGBT teens through their quote-unquote journey and helping them be, quote, the best person they can be. GenSpect, an organization that supports, quote, an evidence-based approach to gender distress, end quote, published an open letter last month criticizing the AAP for stifling debate on the resolution. But there is no evidence. What evidence says that permanent chemical and physical alterations to boys and girls' bodies helps them for the long term? Like, literally, that's my question. What evidence do we have that that's actually a thing? I have seen no evidence that that is helpful. When children are permanently scarred by procedures and then unable to have children of their own, how is that possibly better for themselves or for the community? I cannot think of a way where it is. Sure, you may be saying, well, you feel this way, I'm going to make you feel better by doing what you want to do. But again, when we're talking about children and even adults, giving someone exactly what they want is not always the best choice. We should all know that, right? We should know that, like, sure, you may have dreams. I'll go back again to my son who wanted to be a dinosaur. If I made them into a dinosaur, which isn't even possible, does that make my son happy? No. And now he doesn't want to be a dinosaur because he's a boy and wants to be a boy. And he's soon going to be a man. I mean, like, this all doesn't make any sense. So they went on to say, quote, we're very concerned that the AAP is currently representing only one set of views on how to best help our children thrive. Right. Namely, both social, names and pronouns, etc., right, and medical transition, puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, surgeries, etc., which the AAP refers to as affirmative care. Many of our children have received this care and are anything but thriving. End quote. Right. They're not thriving in this. This isn't good for children. It's not even good for adults, but more so. It's just not good for children. They went on to say in this group letter, quote, it's alarming that not a single chapter or committee within the AAP was willing to, quote, sponsor a resolution that asked to conduct a nonpartisan and systemic review of evidence in pediatric gender medicine, something the AAP has never done. Right. Where's the evidence that this is helpful? There is none. Continuing on, it's even more alarming that the AAP appears to be preemptively suppressing debate by not allowing comments on unsponsored resolution, a rule that did not exist last year when a similar unsponsored resolution got many supported pediatrician votes and comments, end quote. To the Christian organization Focus on the Family, in a 2017 document they published, research suggested that most children suffering from gender dysphoria grow out of their gender confusion by the time they reach puberty. In other words, puberty itself solves most of these problems. And yet, we can't say that. We can't talk about that. Even the pediatricians, the doctors themselves in the American Academy of Pediatrics apparently are not allowed to even say that and talk about that. This is a crazy world. What they're pushing on our children is a terrible moral crime. And we're talking about removing organs that are perfectly healthy, chemically altering, sterilizing young men, young women, girls, and boys because they believe they were born in the wrong body. Or worse, their parents or psychologists or teachers or friends or whomever believe they were born in the wrong body. Let me say this. God made you in your mother's womb. He created you, male or female. He did not make a mistake. God does not make mistakes. Yes, you may feel broken. You may have terrible circumstances surrounding you, but changing your appearance, changing your body parts is not going to fix it. The truth is, those procedures cannot change who you are. You are a precious child of God, and you are broken. You need Jesus. He is the only way you will ever feel better. There is no earthly procedure, process, surgery, substance, or anything else that can help you find peace. Jesus alone is peace. And that leads us to the verse of the day, Ephesians 2:10. For we are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works, which God prepared beforehand that we should walk in them. And verse 14, for he, Christ himself, is our peace. For Church Public, I'm Matt Odegaard. I hope that God blesses you and keeps you. And as always, I hope you keep the faith.